Okay, good morning. So we're up to Siman Kuf Samaches Yud Dalet. So today we'll do Yud Dalet and Tesvav. HaKadosh Baruch Hu's got Rachmanos on us because these are all quite short. And tomorrow is also short, and so we'll keep up even though we've got a short time. So Yud Dalet. Cholut. Says the Mechaber, Cholut, meaning that means scalded, but what does that mean? Pirush kmin pas choltin oiso beroischin. You take a dough and you throw it into boiling hot water. That's the way you cook it. And then afterwards you bake it in an oven. Pas gomahu, that's considered proper bread. And you make hamoitzi on it. Hagos, says the Ramah, and so too, whenever you've got a mixture which is very liquidy, very soft, very thin, when you bake it in an oven without liquids, in other words, you don't cook it, boil it, dinoi kapas, it has the status of bread, and therefore you make the brach of hamoitzi v'shalosh brachas, which is the way the Gemara and Halach always calls birchas hamazon, because be'etzin there are three brachas, the first three, and then later V'nei Yerushalayim is the Hatov HaMeitiv was added later. So you've got three brachas. It's called the hamoitzi and shalosh brachas. So that has got the status of proper bread. And so too, if you bake it in like a frying pan or something like that, but without any liquid, that also has the status of bread. And if you put a little bit of oil in the ilfas, in order that you're not going to burn the dough, that's not called water that would call it boiling and therefore gives it the status of mazonos. That's still called baking. But something where the belila, the sort of the mixture of the dough and the flour and the water is very thin, is very watery, and you fry it in water, in oil, or sorry, in b'mashke, in some sort of liquid, would not have the status of bread, and therefore it's got a din of mazonos and alamicha, etc. Okay, says the Mishnah Berurah, Sif Cotton Pei Gimel, She'achach Chafar B'Tanur. So if you scald it, you put it in boiling water for a moment. I think that's how you bake bagels. You've got boiling water, and you take the dough and you put it into hot water for a little bit, and then you put it in the oven. So, which by the way, we're not going to talk about it, but the whole concept of mazonos bread and everything, it's a bit of a myth for various reasons. Maybe we'll talk about it at some point. Because Lamaisa, for it's got the status of bread. It's got a din of pas. It's very schwer to make a mazonos on it. And often, the amount that you eat anyway, you're being kover suda. So it's got the din of your 2 slices of pizza. So it probably has the status of bread. And B, you're eating enough of it that even if it was mazonos, you need to make you need to wash and to bench. So anyway, that's a different sugya. So it's a difficult area. Anyway, so she'achach offer betana. So you with this dough mixture, you sort of boil, you scald it in boiling water, and then you put it in the oven. Or you fry it in an ilfas without any water. Pas gomuhu, says the Mishnah Berurah Pei Daled. You might have thought that it's not really considered bread because I've scalded it in water, I haven't really baked it. Kamash malon, that if you bake it afterwards, that gives it a status of bread. Says the Mishnah Berurah Pei Hey. Even if the mixture was very thin, that you scald it and then you bake it, even if you fry it in oil, and then you bake it afterwards, also you make hamoitzi. Even if you're not kaver suda, even if you have a small amount, you still make hamoitzi. However, hataz, the tigum bidvash, if you fry it in honey, or b'shemen or oil, then if it's fried in honey or oil or things like that, that gives it the status of mazonos, and you make a mazonos, and it's got the status of pasabah b'kisnin, and you make alamich at the end. And if you're not kaver suda, that means you have a smallish amount of that mazonos, that dough fried in honey or oil. Then, if you have less than a kaviyah suda, which is a few cookies or a slice of this cake or whatever it is, the tikkun b'dvash b'shemen u'chiyagav, the mashve, so then you make it has a state of mazonis. The tikkun b'dvash b'shemen u'chiyagav, the mashve pasabol b'kistin, because if you fry it in oil or in honey, then you give it the status of mazonis and alamichia, like we've said previously. And therefore, so long as you don't have too much of it, which means like several slices of cake or things like that, or 2 slices of pizza, then you would give it the status of pasal b'kisnin. You make a mazonis and alamichia. But how much you need a lot of oil that it sort of pervades the whole taste, that it's very oily or has a flavor of honey or something like that. But the pasal b'kisnin b'siv zayin ein sham mishnah. And that's what we said previously in Siv Zayin. How do you define pasal b'kisnin? One of the 3 shittas was either it was a filled pie or something like that, or it was a thin brittle cracker type thing, or the third pshat was that it's got a flavor, cocoa, honey, oil, that it so pervades the whole thing that it gives it like a taste of that thing. That gives it then a pasal b'kisnin. Okay, but if it's just fried a little bit and it's scalded in water and then it's put in an oven, says the Mishnah Berurah Peivav, even if you don't have a lot of it, you're not kaveh sud on it, you still make hamoitzi. The dafkim lo hoyu dakin b'yoseh, so long as they're not very thin. If it has the status of very thin cracker-like breads, ravita, cracker, then it will be considered pasal b'kisnin. That's previously. V'tigna b'mashka, peizayin, rotzolema shelo yafal al gabi tanur, ela be'ilfas in mashka. It was sort of cooked on a frying pan with liquid. Lav lechem, then it would definitely not have the status of bread, because it never had the din of the dough for these purposes. Okay, let's just do tesvov. Troiknin, hainu, she'oisin guma bekira. The way it works in those days, you have an oven, and imagine like an oven on the floor of on an earthenware floor, and you have like a cone-shaped cylinder, which is your hard oven. And then you bake things and you put your pot on top. But what they would do, we did this Gemara Chaim together, Gemara Brachos. So sometimes you make a little pit in the base of the oven, and you got some flour and water, and you just mix it together, and you put it in the base of the oven, and that cooks because it's so hot. That cooks as a sort of a clever way to use your oven. So says the Mechaber, Treiknin hainu she'oisin guma. You make a little cavity, a little hole, pit, bakira, in the base of your oven. V'noistin bo kemach u'mayim u'rovin bo v'nefesham, and you bake it there. Mevoich olav bermenim mezonos u'brocha achas me'in sholish. That does not give it the status of bread. It's flour, water mixed together, like cooking like a pancake in the bottom of the oven. V'im kovas u'dosei olav mevoich ha'moitzi brechas hamozin. But like with all of this mezonos, if you have a lot of it, then you make hamoitzi and brechas hamazon. Avot trisa, dahainu sheloichin kemach u'mayim u'rovin oiso v'sheichin ala kira. You just pour it on top of the oven, v'hu mispashet v'nefer, and then it spreads very thin, like a pancake type thing. Ein olav teras lechem klal. It does not have the status of bread whatsoever. Ve'ein mevachin olav el bermin in mezonos brachas min shalosh. Va'afilu kavos sudos olav. Even if you're kaveh so you have a lot of it, it just never has the status of bread. Much the same as pasta. We said that if you have a lot of pasta, you have 2-3 bowls of pasta, that does not make it into bread, and you don't therefore make hamoitzi and wash. It's only with like the pizza type things that you, if you have a lot of it, you kaveh suda, you make hamoitzi and wash. Mashen came the pasta that you wouldn't, and so too this second type of whatever it's called, torisa. Okay, let's just do Mishnah Berurah, very little Mishnah Berurah on this. Peiches, kemach u'mayim, I'm mogen avram shekosov she'oisin b'losa raka ma'od. So you've got this oven on the floor, an earthenware floor, and you make a mixture of flour and water, but it's very liquidy. And that's b'delei kava, and therefore you make a bracha of mezonos on this material. Because if the belila wasn't so liquidy, so soft, because we said previously, if it was a bit thicker, then it would actually have the status of bread. But because it's a bli l'rak, it's a very thin, liquidy type of mixture, it's considered a pasabo b'kisnin. Mavorech hamoitzi, da'af agav shebetchilo hisarako, even though initially it was a soft-ish mixture, mikol mok and kivin sha'ifin beguma or miskabet, since it was baked in the guma of the floor of this oven, or isa yachdav nasik pas, that gives it the status of bread if you're kovei suda. Fafilu kovad, but if in the case of the second one, the what was it called, Torisa, even if you're kovei suda, then you don't make a hamoitzi and alamichya, hamoitzi and brichas hamazon. Hamogen Avram b'tzadik b'kovei mavarich alav hamoitzi. He actually says no. If you are kovei, you do make hamoitzi. V'chein hu das habach l'das hatur. Because of beli rabba demachmal zeh ein la'ochle l'toich hasuda hamogen geber machri l'dinik hashulchan aruch ein shom. So just to summarize in 1 minute, we've said in this sif that if you've got an oven and there are two ways of using the extra flour and water, you want to make something with it, don't want to just throw it away. So one way of doing it is you make a little guma, a pit in the bottom of the floor, and you add your mixture there. It's got a din of pasabo b'kisnin, but if you're kovei sud on it, then you would have a lot of it, then you would make hamoitzi and bench. If, however, you take this liquidy mixture and you throw it off the top of the oven, and that is so hot, and it makes like a pancake thing, then according to the mechaber, you make a mazonis, and as much as you have of it, you would only make an alamich. You would never make a brichas hamazon, much the same as pasta. However, the Magen Avraham says he's mitzaded that even that you do if you're kovei suda. It's a bit of a machloikas, a bit of a sofek, and therefore says the end, the best thing to do is to wash, make hamoitzi, and then eat these pancakes in that situation. Okay, say the one you did that.